here. But let's bring this gentleman on. We're going to talk to him about it. And that is, of course, the host of the NFL Matchup Show. And I thankfully, my longtime colleague here on This Week in Pro Football, Sal Paolantonio. Sal, how you doing?
Oh, pretty good, Pat. Pretty good.
Good. Well, it's nice to have you back here for regrettably, what is a little post-mortem. So let me start with this, Sal. The holding call. Just give me a quick take on that holding call, whether you thought the call had to be made or could he have not tossed that flag.
That's where you got to swallow the whistle, Pat. There's no question about it. I don't like the call. Clearly, he held him. Did it impact the game or the route or whatever? I don't think it's debatable at all. I don't think he would have gotten to that football. Looks like it was clearly overthrown. I think Mahomes threw the ball once he saw that the flag was thrown or that the hold was made, and then it kind of influenced the outcome there.
Yeah.
So, you talk about the butterfly effect, which is, one small event can have a major impact on larger events. And you went down that list, and I would say the holding call is big, but Pat, I think Aaron Sipos's punt.
Yeah.
I think that is the major event of the second half.
Yeah.
It flipped the field, Pat, at the most inopportune time.
Yeah, you're certainly right. You are.
I think that punt was, just a low punt.
I know.
It was in the wrong direction.
Yep.
I mean, that's a case where the special teams coach has to get in the face of the punter and remind him, down in distance, time of the game, we are in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You cannot make a mistake here. You must make the right kick, focus on making the right kick. I went back and I looked at the film, and I didn't see that conversation happening, and that's where a coach must step in that circumstance, and that did not happen. Knowing that Sipos had just come back from an injury, and his other punt was not that good in the first half. I mean, to me, that was the biggest play of the second half.
Do you think Sirianni even thought fleetingly about going for it there, Sal?
Well, he said in his press conference today that he did not, and I agree with him. It was a one-score game. Right. If they were down 2 scores, you go, Pat.
Right.
But I agree with him not going. But, your players have to execute in the most important situations.
Right. That is certainly right about that.
I mean, this is the most important punt of this young man's life.
Yeah.
And he blew it.
Yeah. Yeah, that he did. He certainly did, Sal. And it was, unfortunate turn of events, certainly in that regard. And one other thing I want to ask you before we take a quick break then is we talked about the hold. Just tell me quickly the flip of the call on Devontae Smith when he appears to catch that ball.
5 minutes, Pat. It took him 5 minutes. If it takes you 5 minutes to change your mind, you shouldn't change your mind.
You're exactly right, Sal. You're exactly right. And I think replay.
There has to be overwhelming, convincing evidence. Isn't that what we're told all the time? Yeah. There has to be overwhelming, convincing visual evidence to overturn the call. And there was not in that case. They were looking for ways to overturn the call. I don't know why that's the case that happened. But boy, oh boy.
I know.
Those were 2 really bad ones. And you're right on the Quez Watkins. I don't know why he's thrown it to Quez Watkins. I don't even know why Quez Watkins in the game, frankly. I just don't.
Yeah, it's certainly the case, too. And it was such a beautiful throw by Hurts, who was absolutely – and I'll give you credit for this. You said he wasn't hurt, and he certainly didn't play like it, and he was outstanding in that game. As you pointed out, he's the first Super Bowl quarterback, right? First losing Super Bowl quarterback with 4 touchdowns. It's just incredible, and a lot of thinking to do over the offseason. Listen,
I just wrote a piece for March issue of SJ Magazine. Here was my lead.
Right.
The greatest Eagles team of all time suffered the worst defeat of any Eagles team all time.
Oh my God. That sounds like I know. I saw the piece. Thank you for sending it to me in advance. It's a sobering piece. You're right. All right, listen, Sal, when we get back, I want to break down maybe a little more talk. You can get your thoughts on the defensive game plan of the Eagles and exactly what you think systemically went wrong in that second half. We'll do that next with Sal Paolantonio here on This Week in Pro Football. Welcome back to This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports. Pat Callahan here with you. You can give me a follow on Twitter at TWIPF Pat. You can follow the network at JAKIB Sports. You can follow this gentleman on Instagram, Sal Pal ESPN. Sal, at SJ, that SJ magazine piece, you mentioned in here that only one team prior to Sunday had a double-digit lead in a Super Bowl and lost. Teams were 26-1. So you just give me your thoughts about in that second half. What is it, either systemically or performance-wise, that you think went wrong defensively in that second half?
And let's remind everybody, the one team that did lose a double-digit lead at halftime and lost the game was the Falcons to the Patriots in Super Bowl 51.
Right.
So that was 6 years ago. 28-3 they were up.
Yeah.
So this is an historic level of collapse.
Yeah.
That team lost to Tom Brady. This team lost to Patrick Mahomes. So let's do it. One, they never got to Mahomes.
Right.
They could never figure out the calculus. They could never crack the code. He wasn't sacked. He was hardly touched. The biggest problem that I saw was that Andrew Wiley was absolutely handling Hassan Reddick.
Right.
This is not Hassan Reddick's fault.
Right.
Hassan Reddick is a pyrotechnic pass rusher. He's just not that big. He's built on speed and first step, but Wiley did a really good job on him. He's a bigger guy. It's up to Jonathan Gannon to move him around, to get him free. How did Brandon Graham sack Tom Brady in Super Bowl 52? Jim Schwartz moved Graham from left defensive end to left defensive tackle. And Graham took an inside move on the guard, who was left one-on-one with Graham because Fletcher Cox at right defensive tackle was double teamed.
Right.
Pat, this is not rocket science. It's simple math and matchups. It was up to Gannon to figure out ways to confuse the offensive line. Spagnuolo did a great job. If you remember, when Andy Reid lost the AFC Championship game in Kansas City to the Patriots the first time around, who did he fire? He fired Bob Sutton, his defensive coordinator, and he hired Steve Spagnuolo to bring the heat.
Yeah. Guess who was on the other sideline Sunday night? Yep. I know.
Sutton was replaced because he was too passive.
Yeah.
He brought in Spagnuolo, who won the Super Bowl against the Pats when he was DC of the Giants.
Right.
So, the Eagles apparently are talking or interested in talking to Vance Joseph.
Right.
Vance Joseph was the defensive coordinator for the last 4 years in Arizona, 2019 to 2022. Vance Joseph led the NFL in blitz percentage for the last 4 years. Led the NFL. Most aggressive blitz percentage, 37% in the last 4 seasons.
Right.
A complete departure from Jonathan Gannon. So that tells me if they're even remotely interested in bringing Van Joseph in, that inside the Eagles organization, they realize they must make the same move that Andy Reid made when he fired Sutton and hired Spagnuolo.
Fair enough. Okay. Now, an overall question then relative to the same thing, Sal, because you're talking about Gannon versus Spagnuolo. There's Sirianni against Reid. You have a neophyte coaching staff in terms of a Super Bowl against a veteran staff, the head coach of which at least has been there 3 out of 4 years. Did the Eagles, did the lack of coaching, big game coaching experience like that, did that manifest at all on Sunday?
I didn't see it, Pat. I just talked about 2 coaching areas that I thought were faulty. I didn't think the special teams coach did enough to inure Mr. Sipos with the gravity of the moment, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Before you send your troops into battle, before you send your sales force out onto the street, you tell them, this is a big moment.
Right.
We got to have this number or else we got to cut job, whatever it is.
Right.
There's a pivotal moment in your company, in your organization, in your game. You've got to make that clear. So that's one.
Right.
2, I thought Sirianni coached as aggressive as could be. I agree with him, not going for it on that 4th down and punt thing.
All right.
And by the way, Shane Steichen did a hell of a job. I mean, his play calling was masterful.
Right.
Masterful.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue it, Sal. 35 points they put up. And I just have to ask you, because there's so many statistics from this game that just make you shake your head. But the Eagles managed to put up 35 points. They held Patty Mahomes to under 200 yards passing, and they lose. I mean, can you even get your arms around or your head around a circumstance like that where the Eagles appear to contain Mahomes? Now, he was terrific. I don't deny it. But he wasn't pyrotechnic.
Well, he was efficient. 15 of 18, as you put that number up there.
Yeah.
And 15 first downs, Pat, in the second half. 15 first downs in the second half.
Yeah.
Most teams don't have that in a full game.
Right.
And he had that in the second half. Second half.
So
second half, 15 first downs, second half. Can't they couldn't get him off the field.
No.
But they couldn't get Brady off the field. Brady had 505 yards of passing in Super Bowl 52.
You're right.
They needed one stop. How did they get one stop in Super Bowl 52?
Yeah.
It was the coaching of Jim Schwartz and the execution of Brandon Graham. One creative idea is what you needed, and it didn't happen.
Yeah. It's funny. Mike Silsky in the Inquirer quoted Josh Sweat as saying, I can't pinpoint any one little thing. We just made too many mistakes. Now, example, Sal, those 2 embarrassing touchdown passes that Mahomes had in the 4th quarter, where it seemed as though they ran mirror image plays on the left side and on the right side. The Eagles traditionally play man-to-man down there. Did they get out coached there? Did Kansas City?
No, I don't think so. Pat, I think it was a schoolyard play. It was their guys beating our guys. That's all it was. That's all it was, Pat.
All right.
I think it was that. Obviously, Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid saw Doug Peterson do the same thing. Those little option routes, those little okey-doke routes, on the field, what do they call them? They call them jerk routes. Right. Make the defender look like a jerk.
Yeah. Well, all right. All right. So I want you to spend a couple minutes now on this. And that is, I was looking this up too with my fabulous record and fact book that you're kind enough to give me. And of the 56 Super Bowl losers prior to Sunday, only 8 made it back the next year. And I got to tell you, of those 8, 7 of them were prior to 1993. In the last 29 years of Super Bowls, only one team, the Patriots, have made it back the next year. Why is it so hard for a team to make it back? Is it psychological, or is it they're poached like the Eagles have been already this week? What do you attribute the major factors to why it's so hard to get back there?
All right, so when you sent me that stat, I went back to my record and fact book, and then I called my boys at ESPN and Stats and Information because, you got to double check.
That's right.
I mean, when you come up with a number like that, the old adage in journalism is if your mother says she loves you, you check it out. Right? So I checked it out.
Right.
It's definitely accurate, but here's part 2 of it. The last NFC team to do it was 50 years ago, the Vikings.
Oh, my God. That's even worse. 50 years ago.
50 years ago, 74.
Yeah. Yeah, how about that? So what do you think's behind it, Sal? Do you think it's the crushing the way they lost the game, and the organization, like the Rams last year, they just can't get reoriented to doing it again, or is it a matter of Jimmy's and Joe's?
Well, the last team to do it was the Pats in 2017, and they had Belichick and Brady.
Right.
So they lost to the Eagles, and then when they came back and beat – I'm sorry, Pat. They came back and beat your Rams.
That's fine. That's right.
And one of the least memorable Super Bowls
That's
of all
a
time.
fact, too. That's a fact, too.
Yes. So, it's hard to do because, your quarterback has to play well. Everybody has to stay healthy. I think for this Eagles team, it's super hard because the core 4 players are older. Johnson, Graham, Kelsey,
right,
and Fletcher Cox. Right. I think that's an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know who the starting running back is going to be next year. Does Miles Sanders deserve the kind of money he's going to probably want to come back? Do they want him back after that performance in the Super Bowl?
I don't know.
I don't know. There's a major question mark there.
Yep.
Right tackle, center.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think they need to upgrade at wide receiver. I don't think they're good enough at wide receiver for sure.
And then they have two guys in the secondary, Bradbury and Gardner Johnson, who are free agents.
I would definitely bring back both of them.
Yeah.
I think Bradbury, despite what happened, is a great leader, hard worker, good teammate, good enough. Now listen, he doesn't play man, obviously.
Right.
That's the reason why Wink Martindale didn't want to keep him in New York.
Right.
But I think he's a valuable player. I really do.
All right. And the loss of Shane Steichen, who goes to Indianapolis.
Big.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned that the Eagles are looking now at replacing Gannon. What are your thoughts on the replacement or how the Eagles are going to go about replacing Shane Steichen?
Well, Shane Steichen, you look at it, Pat. Here, I want to make sure I got the number right here. So when Steichen started calling the plays until the Super Bowl, Steichen and Jalen Hurts together was 16-2, Pat.
Yeah.
Steichen calling the plays with Jalen Hurts as the starter, 16-2. After the Super Bowl, 16-3.
Yeah.
That's hard to replace.
That is.
Now,
that is.
I have a lot of respect for Brian Johnson. He was a terrific college player. He's a smart young man. He's obviously in some really tight with Jalen Hurts because of his relationship with Averian, his Jalen Hurts' dad. And I talked to Brian Johnson a couple of times one-on-one during the Super Bowl. It was my first real time to get to talk to him. He's just sharp. He talks about the constant evolution of a player during the year. He and Jalen have the same kind of really direct, purposeful, hard-working, studious personalities. I think he would be a wonderful pick for offensive coordinator, but he's never called plays at the NFL level.
Yeah.
So Sirianni probably will go back to calling plays, or there'll be some kind of, collaboration permutation going on.
Right.
But Brian Johnson should be the OC, I think.
A much tougher schedule too next year, Sal. I mean, let's face it.
Toughest in the league.
Yeah. That first place schedule, man, that could be brutal because now that you're
That's
playing.
Another reason why it's hard to go back.
That's right. You're certainly right. I think there's a lot of psychology to it too. I think it takes an incredible determination and mental strain to get there, and then when you don't win it, it's just so. I think it's incredibly hard to summon up that what it takes mentally to get back there.
And I hate to go on to a tangent for you, but you look at the NFC. Why would Aaron Rodgers want to go to the AFC?
I know.
Why?
I know.
The NFC is wide open. Brady's gone.
Yeah.
New Orleans is shot.
I know. You're certainly right. Yep, you're certainly right. Even the 49ers don't have a quarterback. The Rams look like they have to rebuild.
Minnesota. What's going on with the Rams?
You're right.
It's really the Eagles and the Cowboys and the Packers.
Yeah.
Why would he want to go to the AFC?
Yeah, especially at the 39, however old Rodgers is. Why would you do that? Because he's down to 1-2 years at the most. Why go against Josh Allen and this guy who's the best in the league right now, Mahomes, obviously, and Joe Burrow? You're exactly right.
Yeah, that's why I think Carolina will probably go after Derek Carr.
Yeah.
It makes the most sense to me. I mean, if I'm any quarterback, I go to the NFC right now. It's wide open.
I agree. All right, Sal, that's going to do it. It's such a shame it ends on a down note, but I want to thank you. You did such a great job this season, and I appreciate it. You were a real highlight to this show, and I appreciate you coming on all these times, and look forward very much to having you back again next year as we strap them on again for the 2023 season. All right.
Well, I can't thank you. I can't thank JAKIB Media enough. Young Xander there, the producer, is a real class act, sharp young man, fantastic. Thank you for all the support and help all year long. Right. And Pat, let's do it again next year.
Yes. Thanks again, Sal. You're the best. All right. Appreciate it. And look forward to talking to you. All right. That's the great Sal Paolantonio. And a very good discussion. Certainly Sal always comes armed with a ton of stats about what happened. So we'll continue the post-mortem. Next, I have the indomitable Sean Green. We'll see. Sean's usually an upbeat guy. We'll see how that works out from the Sports Gambling Podcast. We'll talk about some early Super Bowl odds for 2023. That's next on This Week in Pro Football.